I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
All right. Happy Sunday, guys. Welcome to Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. My special guest tonight is Marcus Cage. He's the host of The Political Matrix, or he's one of the co-hosts of The Political Matrix. Welcome back, Marcus.
Thank you for having me back.
All right, so we're going to get into this first story here coming out of Virginia Beach. For those of you that live in the VA, we got to make sure that we highlight stories like this because I feel like this story in particular is not being talked about so far from what I've seen on YouTube, and people need to know what's going on. So Dr. Raven Baxter, also known as Raven the Science Maven. So she's actually not just your ordinary doctor. She's actually pretty well known in Virginia. She's done a lot for kids when it comes to helping kids get into science. So this is like her big thing. She's been on the news before because of her work. But recently she experienced something that I think a lot of people just don't talk about, or they're not aware that it happened. So this story came in here and it was covered by the Daily Mail, but it was also covered by the New York Times. It says Black molecular biologist is banned from buying a $749,000 Virginia Beach condo because of her race by white owner, who the white owner is 84 years old. It says Jane Walker, 84, allegedly refused to sell a condo to Dr. Raven Baxter over race. So I just want to read this first part here so you guys understand what's going on. It says a molecular biologist says that she was prevented from buying the Virginia Beach condo of her dreams after the white owner learned that she was Black, it is alleged. Dr. Raven Baxter, 30, she's 30 years old, very well accomplished for 30, was prepared to buy the home after a virtual tour of the property. It had everything she wanted: a private foyer, wainscoting, exquisite crown molding, and a marble fireplace. Baxter offered the asking price, $749,000. So she didn't even offer less or try to negotiate with the asking price. It was promptly accepted by the seller. The molecular biologist, who works remotely for Mount Sinai Hospital, then sent over a down payment and the condo went into escrow. But then she received a call late at night from the broker who told her that the seller, Jane Walker, 84, now wanted to back out of the deal. He said, I don't know how to tell you this, but she doesn't want to sell the home to you, and it's because you're Black. Marcus, I want to first go to you.
Yeah, when you sent this story over to me and I read it, and I'm like, how? I mean, they people are normally not as so open and like tipping their hand. They normally find some other excuse. Oh, well, I think we're going to keep it in the family, or I think my daughter, and they come up with some kind of other excuses. So it's kind of a little rare that it's so flagrant that she just basically came out and said, oh, it's because of race. And the fact that the brokers who were involved in this relayed the message to her is kind of shocking to me also, because I'm like, you guys are supposed to already nip that in the bud before it even gets back to the purchaser. Crazy story.
That's right. And I want to show people the property here as well, because some people were asking on social media, where did she find a house like that in Virginia Beach? It's not a house, it's a condo. Okay, so Virginia Beach is expensive for those who are not aware. I've lived in Virginia Beach. I have family that live in that area. It is very expensive. So it was a condo in this building. So, right, it says the Gone with the Wind inspired property is near the beach and features stunning views of the Atlantic. And it goes on to say here, earlier that day, the scientist and her longtime boyfriend, Dr. Ronald Gamble Jr., a theoretical physicist who works for NASA. So again, these are two people who are doing pretty well financially. They're doing better off than I am. Okay, so it's not like we can't even say that she was discriminated against because they don't have enough money or they didn't offer enough for the condo. So these are very, very well-off people financially. Says that he made the 3-hour drive to the condo from their apartment in Alexandria, Virginia. Alexandria, Virginia, also very expensive. Anywhere near DC is expensive. I'm just going to tell you guys. For the first time, the two scientists explored the property in person. When Baxter had previously toured the condo virtually, her camera had been off. Jane Walker, the seller, was unaware of her race, which, as she should be. It should not matter what color the buyer is. After concluding their inspection of the property, which is near the beach and features a view of the Atlantic, they bumped into the seller. As the couple prepared to leave, Walker appeared and her agent, Susan Pender of Berkshire Hathaway RW Town Realty, introduced the two parties. So for those who were wondering, this is how the seller found out that the buyer was Black. Moments after the scientist left, Baxter said Walker confronted her agent, telling her that she was not willing to sell her condo to a Black person. Walker ordered Pender to terminate the sale. Pender called Wayne Miller, an agent at 757 Realty, and informed him of the turn of events. Miller proceeded to contact Baxter's agent, Bill Loftus, who called her with the troubling news. Baxter was crushed to hear that the seller was reneging. She loved the condo. It's a classic home with a ton of character. It's absolutely gorgeous. You can walk to the beach. It was like a steal. I basically put in an offer sight unseen. According to the condo Zillow page, the Georgian style property was built in 1932. It has a spiral staircase, kind of like Gone with the Wind. I'll show you guys the picture here. So it's very pretty. And by the way, condos are not necessarily just one level. Like you can have condos that have multiple floors. A friend of mine lived in a condo that was like 3 stories. So it doesn't have to be, people think it's just an apartment. No, like it can look like this. And so apparently after this happened, she took to Twitter, and I'll get into the Twitter post in just a second, because that's how I believe mainstream media caught wind of this story. But Marcus, this speaks to something, and this is why it's frustrating to me when people say, don't talk about race, just talk about class. Because here is someone who is obviously, when we're talking about class, she's in a class that I'm definitely not in. She's a doctor. She's a doctor. Her boyfriend's a doctor. And she's a well-known doctor. It's not like she just works at a hospital. Like Dr. Raven, the science maven, is a brand. So she's known for doing a lot of things like with her career. But this is a situation where the seller clearly stated, allegedly, that she did not want to sell the condo to a Black person. Your take on that?
It's even crazier because this would be what would be considered like so-called the cream of the crop of the upper Black community. And this is somebody who they didn't get it from some rap deal or playing basketball or something like this. This is a accomplished intellectual and her longtime boyfriend. These are two, like, the types of young pillars of the community which you would aspire your kids to be like. And some of us, even as adults, we aspire to be like them. But when people who are obviously living everything, lives that are on the up and up and trying to do well and trying to do good for themselves and trying to actually help the surrounding society that they live in, are still going through this. So when people use excuse, oh, well, it's because they had loud music, or, oh, I saw this ghetto-ness, and no, scratch that. There's some people who clearly it's going to be on the basis of race alone, and it don't have to go more than that. I would also throw in some of these like land covenants and things like this. They started off in areas like Virginia and a little north of that because of Black people who were either buying their way out of slavery and things like that, and started purchasing plots of land or trying to rent out places. And this has a long history. It's sad to see this still going on.
Another thing too that I want to mention, because like I said, I lived in the Virginia Beach area. I have family in the DMV. For those who don't know, it's DC, Maryland, Virginia. Just saying.
I was there in the military too, in Norfolk area for a while.
Yeah, so it's not uncommon to meet Black people, particularly Black families in that area that are very well off. That is one thing I will say. The difference between living in Massachusetts and living in that area is that in Massachusetts, number one, there aren't as many Black people here, and there are fewer Black professionals. But when you go to that area, there are a lot of Black professionals. There are a lot of Black people also that are part of what we call the boule, that are part of that group.
Yeah. Well, think not only do you have government officials, you have members of their staff, you have lobbyists, you have a lot of law branches. You have a lot of doctors, professionals. You have a lot of scientists in that area. You have a lot of high skilled jobs that are in that area, and so it attracts some of the best talent through all the different race groups. So you're going to have a lot more minorities who are doing well versus the typical areas where it might be dilapidated areas where you might have some of the people who are just more working class. So more of the Black people you're going to have in these areas are going to be the ones who would fall into the boule or the PMC class.
That's right. That's why it's funny when people call me PMC, because I'm just like, honey, I don't make that kind of money. I don't even walk in those circles. Danny said Cambridge, Massachusetts. No, Cambridge has become very bougie. Is pretty hipster like. There aren't as many Black people in Cambridge as there used to be. You'd be surprised. But
the Cornell types.
Yeah, especially when you compare it to Maryland and Virginia, anywhere near that DC area, you're going to see, more diversity, but not just more diversity, but I'm talking about you're going to see more Black people that own homes. And you don't see that much here where I live in Massachusetts. But she took to Twitter, and I believe this is what got the attention of the New York Times, because they were the first ones to break this story. She said, my real estate agent's broker just called me at 9 p.m. on a Friday to tell me that the seller doesn't want to sell a house to me because I am Black. This is after the inspection, the contract agreement, the down payment. Baby, I'm either buying your house or buying your block. Choose one. So again, it's not like you said, this wasn't like a rapper, basketball, but even if it was, still, this woman is a doctor. Yeah.
Well, another thing I would throw in is I think the reason why it probably did catch the New York Times attention, for one, she had already kind of went a little bit more viral with some of her writing, some of her speeches that she's done. She had a couple she reviewed an album or something, and she got a little attention for that. And I think that the people in that DC area, they're so used to seeing so many different people from so many different walks of life, whether you're Black, Latino, Native American, LGBTQ. And so in that PMC kind of DMV bubble, you start thinking that the rest of the country is like this, and we're living kind of in a post-racist society. And then something like this it snaps them out of it. And it's not that this is a one-off. It's just that this is somebody who's on the radar that got this attention because of how esteemed they are. And it's not to take away or put her in the, oh well, they're treating her special because of this. It's the fact that a lot of these PMCs and people who work in the boule, or not boule, but the people who are in this kind of like neoliberal kind of bubble, they don't catch into the average working class person like me or Sabby or some of you out there. When it happens to us, it's like, yeah, whatever, you're just complaining. But somebody who has a profile, it's a lot harder to ignore an injustice like this when it happens to them.
Right, because I covered the story last year. I don't know if everybody remembers, but last year, the 90-year-old Black woman in South Carolina, she was being sued by developers because she was unwilling to sell her land, which had been in her family for decades. So instead of her suing them because they were trying to pressure her, they sued her. And that story made like local news, but a lot of people did not even talk about that story. I'm like, does everybody see what's happening here? How these developers are coming in and pushing people like off of their land. So it does happen, but you can see even on her Twitter page, like I said, this is not someone who was just not, you know what I mean? Like Raven Baxter, PhD, molecular biologist, science educator, director at the Science Haven, which is a nonprofit that she has. If you go here, the pinned tweet on her page, y'all, we did it. I had a wild idea to get 100 telescopes to 100 kids across the country and give them astronomy education to inspire the next generation of science. And you rallied behind me and we got it done. I cannot thank you enough for your support. Thank you. Thank you. And I can't really play the news clip on here because that's local news and they'll have copyright. But what I'm saying is that she's been on the media before because of her nonprofit, because of what she's done for kids in science. So again, to Marcus's point, if this was someone like if it was me or Marcus that this happened to, it probably wouldn't have received as much attention. But she is known. She is known. And people need to understand that there is racism in real estate. I went through the home buying process. I know from experience, there is racism in real estate and it still exists today. And those beach communities, because I can tell you a little thing about Virginia Beach. Those beach communities are hella racist.
Yeah, I lived in Atlantic Beach in the Jacksonville area. And so I can understand how some of these things go down. And another thing that I feel should definitely be highlighted in a situation like this is the fact that it was kind of leaked out, that the seller kind of told on herself. And a lot of times what might happen in situations like this is the broker might come up with an excuse for them, even when they tell them directly. So the information doesn't go from broker to you. You don't hear the reason why. You just hear that the sale fell through. And so all you can do is kind of wonder and not be sure. You're like, wait a minute, I didn't even try to negotiate you. I didn't try to talk you down. I gave you exactly what you asked for. I'm already coming with I'm putting my money where my mouth is. And I'm saying, let's do this deal, and giving you no reasons to have pause or concern. And this, sometimes when you have these situations, it shows you that it's clearly just about race, and you can't just ignore the racial aspects of things. And I feel this is something that some of our peers and colleagues, especially in the independent media sphere, have a problem with, because this is something that they're not facing and they're not dealing with. So it's one, I'm not saying that they don't have their issues, because we all have our different issues we have to deal with. But if you're not having to go through something, it's easier for you to dismiss it. I don't know what it's like to be a 110-pound girl, 5'3", walking around in the middle of the night. I don't know I don't know that fear, because I don't have to deal with that. And we have to be able to put ourselves in each other's shoes if we're actually going to be allies and realize the situations that we're having, especially with racial issues.
This is very good points. And some people don't want to talk about it because they don't want to upset their audience. It's just the reality of the situation. I've told people before, you can like it or not like it, but either way, I really don't give a damn. I'm not going to sit up here and pretend like these things are not happening so that you can feel comfortable. And some people have done that. And it goes on to say here, I want to show you the response that this person made Sachaluk, they were replying to Raven. They said that's illegal. Yep. You should report the broker immediately to the Department of Professional Regulation. We are bound by ethics to refuse to represent a client who expressed racial discrimination. Yeah, it's illegal, but that doesn't mean it. This is the thing to kill me when people come in and they say that's illegal. Just because something is illegal doesn't mean it's not happening.
Mm-hmm. I mean, great point. Another thing that I would throw in is, just because they might have come to some resolution quickly and then, oh, well, they say, because in the article it says that her kids like changed her mind or something like that. Nonetheless, those brokers still are in violation themselves for hearing the said reason that the seller chose, that she decided to not want to sell on a racial basis is still illegal. And the fact that they didn't decide, you know what, it doesn't matter. It's out of your hands. We're selling this. We're the broker. We're not going to allow your reason, because it goes against actually two different laws. What was it, 1968? And I believe it's like 1880s law that had to do with racial discrimination and rights.
Yeah. Another thing too, for people who haven't been through like this experience, the home buying experience and stuff like that, some of the realtors too can also be racist. And what they'll try to do is, like, if you say, I want to look at this house in this neighborhood or whatever, and they see you, because the realtor does meet you.
Mm-hmm.
Like they know who you are, right? All of a sudden, the house that's for sale isn't for sale anymore, depending on what you look like. But then your white friend gets to look at the house.
Yep.
And this is the thing, like Cory Booker talked about this before, and I have many criticisms for Cory Booker, but he talked about his parents going through this back when he was, a kid, right? When he was growing up. But that was decades ago. These things still happen. Realtors have been known to pretend like all of a sudden these houses are not for sale based on what you look like. Oh no, we don't want to put you into that community. Now, how does that affect your family dynamic? Because we all know that zip codes matter when it comes to a public education system in this country. So obviously the schools that are in neighborhoods that have more property tax, that are funded more by the property taxes, those schools are heavily resourced. So this is how sometimes, and you see this especially here in Massachusetts, in the eastern Massachusetts area, this is why you'll see people that are Black lawyers and Black doctors, and people say, why do you live in Dorchester? Why do you live in Roxbury? Why do you live in Mattapan? You're a doctor. Why aren't you living out in the suburbs somewhere like in Lexington or Concord or whatever? Because they are not welcome there.
Mm-hmm. Well, another thing that I would throw in, and it's a great point you bringing up the education system. Well, there's so many other aspects. You factor in health as far as the medical facilities that are around you. You factor in possible crime rates, and because you might not have been able to get into this certain area that you wanted to get into that might have really good property values, and will have I'm trying to remember, what is it that you put in it, equity. That'll build equity. You might not be able to get that being forced into certain areas because of crime rate, because of vacancy, of the amount of residents. All of those things have to factor in. And then also to compound with that, environmental issues. Some certain areas, they decide, well, we're just going to build a bunch of power lines right above your house. And how does that affect the family down the road? And so all of these different, unseen taxes that are put on you by some of this racism, that it can just be the broker, it could be the seller, it could be some kind of laws that, or it can be the banks. Even the banks, your bank can decide, oh, well, we're not going to give it to them for that. Or we think Sabby makes enough, so you know what? We're just going to throw her percentage is going to be a little bit higher per month. And so all of these things we have to factor in. And if you look at the history, in most major cities, how this has been going on, how this added taxes has really taxed the Black community and the wealth of the Black community overall by charging more and by not being able to get as much equity built into our places, because most people, their actual wealth comes from the properties that they own. And if you're boxed out, that's something that you're losing out on.
That's right. And Maddie, thank you so much for saying this. The suburbs were built on white flight. And that's another thing. You got to think back to, during white flight, how Black people were shut out of those suburban communities. It's not that
Mhm.
even Black families that had the money to move there, they were shut out, not just by the communities, but also by the banks that didn't want to give loans to them. No, 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 no. We don't want you to come into that neighborhood. So when white people left the inner city and moved into the suburbs, they took their wealth and their money with them. And
Yep.
that's why the schools in the inner city are under resourced and under, service. Because when you take the wealth with you, remember, public schools are funded by property taxes.
Yep.
So, and that's how, and guess who got stuck in the inner cities because of those policies?
Yeah, I would throw in, imagine on the flip side, if you took the lower income, predominantly white areas like trailer parks and things like that, and you forced those into the suburban areas. What would that do to the property values, the crime rates, and all those different things like that, the taxes that go in for the schools? What would that do overall? And that's how you have to look at it. Let's say, for instance, that you're by boxing people out of a certain area, you're adding taxes onto them, and that's an unseen tax that's not factored into why we have this huge wealth gap between the Black and white community.
Yeah, it's really sad, like what has happened, and I'm glad that her story is receiving attention. That the New York Times, as bad as their journalism can be, I'm glad that they covered that story and allowed it to receive national attention. But the reality is, guys, it's not just Dr. Raven that this is happening to.
Nope. Sadly, we wish that this could be a one-off and the situation can be resolved and we get past it. But there are more situations like this that are going on currently and that are going to be going on in the future. And it's going to take for people to be diligent. I'm so glad that Sabby is covering this story, and more people need to. When you see something, say something. When you see situations like this is the only way we can actually have any kind of impact or change it, by shedding light on the problems, because you can't address a problem if you don't know there's a problem.
That's right. And it's not just, rejecting people that are trying to buy homes that have already put down the down payment. It's also pushing people out of the communities that they do already exist in. It's the gentrification, which is happening heavily here in Boston. It's been happening for years, but it's getting even worse. It happened in DC and is continuing to happen. New York City, all these big, like, major
Out
cities.
here where I am, LA.
Exactly. And so these people who grew up in those communities are being pushed out of those communities, and they now have a longer commute to work. And if you live in an area where the public transportation is bad, or you just don't have a car and you need to have a car, like I would imagine in LA, you need to have a car.
Oh, yeah.
That makes it harder for you to get back and forth to work. Now you're talking about people being pushed out of Roxbury, being pushed out of Dorchester. People have been pushed out of Cambridge, further south into southern part of Massachusetts, or further north into northern Massachusetts, into places where there is no public transportation, but that's where they have to live because that's where they can afford. The reality is here, the towns that have public transportation, that have that access, are more expensive to live in. So people who can't afford that are going to go to the towns that don't have public transportation. But now that may mean they may have a 2-hour commute to work. So this is not a quality of life that we should have in this country, regardless. And when people bring up the situation with the workers, I want to remind everyone, Black people, the majority of Black people, are working class.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you were talking about the commute time, just for measure, I work about 7.5 miles from my home. It takes me on average roughly about 35 minutes on a good day to 45 minutes or more to get back and forth from work to home. Now imagine if I live 15 miles away. We're talking about over an hour commute to work and home. How much time does that take away from you and your family? How much wear and tear is it on your vehicle, the stop and go? All of those things have to be factored into what's going on in these situations like this.
That's right. And it's just an ongoing issue. So you guys, if you're not familiar with her, give her a follow on Twitter. Again, this is Dr. Raven, the science maven. Give her a follow on Twitter. She already has over 165,000 followers. Like I said, she's not just she's not just
Well,
like,
I'll definitely be following her now, especially when I heard about the thing you sent me about the telescopes, because I remember something that was like a pivotal thing for me in my childhood with like the chemistry sets and the telescopes and things that my mom would give me. And it was fascinating to me as a young kid, and how it piques your mind to be interested in so many other things than just the typical, social media stuff that kids are seeing now in school. And it can kickstart a whole new generation of scientists and engineers. And that's something that we definitely need more of, no matter which which group you fall into, black, white, other. But these are the kind of people that needed to be uplifted in this society. Less Cardi B's and Meg Thee Stallions and Jay-Z's and stuff. But this is what I would like to see, more leadership like this. And these are the people we need to applaud.
I agree. And I want to also mention this as well. Thank you, James. Don't forget the New Deal under FDR imposed redlining on Black veterans, and they could not get homes under the GI Bill. This is why it used to piss me off when people say that they were a FDR Democrat. I'm like, what does that even mean?
Well, what FDR did in particular, bringing up FDR, he refined some of these racist policies, because when some of my research I've looked into, a lot of the early redlining goes back to, believe it or not, your state that you're in right now goes to Massachusetts. And it was 1840s time period, roughly about 20 years or so, roughly 20 to 30 years before the Emancipation Proclamation. And the reason why is you were starting to see more and more inventions and things like that, which were decreasing some of the plantations' need for manual labor. And so even before the Civil War, it was starting to become a cost analysis, and it's kind of weird. We're in this same situation now with more automation and things, which is threatening workers' careers and jobs. But now some of them they didn't care. They just were going to be brutal and horrible to people and keep people in slavery anyway. But with the machines and stuff, you saw more people were starting to get out of slavery or even escape, and they were moving to these northern states. And these northern states and western states, the so-called free states, were the ones who were putting a lot of these redlining laws into play before the end of slavery. And so they were getting themselves ahead of the curve. And then what happened is the southern states eventually started to follow suit. And so tying that up to the New Deal, all they did was they tweaked some things. And that's where you started seeing more covenant laws being spread across the country, which a lot of that happened in the early 1900s, like 1905, 1910, 1920, where if you had a grandparent who was a descendant of slavery, you couldn't own that. It couldn't own this property. And this went past the person who owned the house all the way back to developers also.
That's right. Marcus, thank you so much. Before you go, where can people find you?
Well, you guys can find me over at the Political Matrix here on YouTube, or you guys can check me out on the Rockfin side. I'm at Real Marcus J Cage or at Marcus James Cage, and I'm typically not hard to find. If you guys want to chat me up or send me a story that you'd like to see me cover on the show, just send it my way. Thank you again, Sabby, for having me here. It's always an honor to be with you. Yeah,
guys, make sure you support Black content creators for real, because
the
struggle.
I wanted to say one more thing. If you guys know of other Black content creators out there that are not getting enough shine, not that I have a big platform at all, but my goal is to try to work on more collaboration with more Black content creators so that you guys can hear more of our voices instead of some of our allies speaking for us. So if you guys can, send those to me, send those to Sabby, and we can start getting more collaborations. You guys can hear directly from us our views, because we don't all, it's not like you just get me and then you get Sabby's views, or you just get Nick and then you get all, or you get Nico, or you get Chris, you know, my co-host. All of us have our own different takes. We agree on plenty of things. There's things that we're going to have little nuanced differences, and you actually get to hear really what the Black community thinks if you can hear more Black voices.
Yes, definitely. And definitely send that my way, because a lot of times, like, I may just not know because the algorithm is not showing them to me. So
yes.
All right, Marcus, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, guys, that was Marcus Cage. Check out his channel on YouTube, The Political Matrix. It's really cool. He co-hosts that show with Chris. I think they usually come on late Saturday nights, although I think they may be doing more streams as well now throughout the week. But definitely check them out, because, again, we're not all a monolith. You may watch Marcus's channel and you may get a different perspective from what I say. You may watch, my channel and get a different perspective from what Bree may say or something like that. But I think it's important to check out other people, because, again, like, there may be something that they say on Political Matrix that I may have forgotten about or I may not have thought of, right? So it's good to check out other people. And I know a lot of people have really come through for me. And the reason why, I told you guys this, the reason why I'm even at 100,000 subscribers is because people really did try to promote me and platform me. And I think it's really important that we continue to do that. Right? Okay. What's up, guys? What's up? That's right. It's Sunday. I'm back. Let's go to some of the comments highlighted here, and then we will shout out patrons. And then, of course, we'll show that beautiful thumbnail and we'll keep it moving. Keep it moving. All right. Thank you, Andre, for the super chat. We must stand firm in our principles, doing what's right for justice and human rights. Let's demand accountability and real leadership now. Our values must lead the way, not political expediency. Very good point there, Andre. Rick says, this reminds me of the Dr. Henry Louis Gates story. Even if she gets to move in, beware of the cops. It's not just that homeowner that's racist around there. Yeah, that's a good point to bring up, Rick. That's a really good point. I mean, if she may not even want to live there now, like, to be honest, even if this were to get resolved. What's up, Charles? My brother's house was appraised for $50K less than its value. Does not surprise me. For $50K less than its value, he had an Arab friend pretend to be the owner of the home. Since he had an Arabic name, the house was appraised for $50K more. Yeah, these things happen. It happens. Thank you for the super chat, Roger. Elders thought education would protect us from racism. I believe they did. Thank you, Alcus. Chicago, while renting, they will rent you at a higher price for the higher floor if you are a POC, but if you're white, you get a deal on your lease. Interesting. I've heard some stories about Chicago, but that is interesting. Cloudness, B1 fam. So Biggie signed Junior Mafia, Kim, and Cam to his label, but when he died, Puff made himself the manager. Then he broke up Junior Mafia and took Cease and Kim. Do you mean Case? Or okay, maybe not. And took Cease and Kim because Big had wrote most of their material. That's why he wanted his publishing. He did 5 albums plus a lot of the songs on No Way Out. But a lot of Brooklyn cats knew it was foul to have Biggie in Cali after Tupac passed. Interesting stuff there. Who did I skip over? Oh, sorry. Tia. We have been through that a few times. One realtor tried to force us into areas that had our people, i.e. geographic racism. Yep, they'll do that too, regardless of where you said you wanted to look. Notori, what's up? I see your little muscles, Sabby. What's up, Notori? I've been working out. Went to the gym this morning. The Oracle says not to mention the corporations that departed many of these major metro urban centers. Yep. See, this is what happened in Baltimore too, right? So like my family is originally from Baltimore. You know, there used to be a lot of factories in Baltimore. the Domino, Domino Sugar, Domino, and all these other businesses. And once they left, so did the jobs. Thank you, Roger. TD Hip Hop, Phil, Black Alpha Network, Sonny Johnson. Thank you, Roger. I know about them, but I think Marcus and I were referring to people that are smaller, like some of the smaller channels. But thank you. I do know about them. And thank you, Cynical. Did you see South Africa's election? Not yet. I haven't had a chance yet, Cynical. I was closely watching what's happened in Mexico. So I might be able to cover both of those Tuesday evening. But yeah. Okay. Let's get that comment on Rumble, Eric. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Ken Man G, for the Rumble rant. Sabby is a superhero. She works a day job and is able to do amazing shows with an upbeat mood. Rock on, girl. Thank you, Ken Minji. And thank you, Han Doc. I grew up in post-war New Jersey in a white vets-only subdivision. Houses that were $15K in 1956 now go for $750K. Yeah, buying homes is just... there's no way I would be able to buy a house today. There's no way. And thank you, Michael. Sabby, investing in the African continent. Question mark. What do you mean? Investing what? You'll have to come back to me. All right. Let's go ahead and give a shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for your support, holding down the fort around me. Sup. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: ultimate, Sabinators. There's also Sabsters in the house. Don't forget about those guys. And Sabbies as well. Thank you. And members. Shout out, fam. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate you. Thank you. All right. We have more stories to cover. Crazy things are happening out there. Let's take a look at that beautiful thumbnail because it is about to get wild up in here. Okay. What else are we discussing today? We do have a really good news story today that I'm excited to talk about. So every now and then we have to bring some good news, right? All right, tonight we are discussing George Galloway's huge announcement, guys. That is good news for those of you in the UK. If you like his politics, I'm pretty sure you're going to be very happy about this news. And it speaks to having a strategy and following that strategy through. So George Galloway has just been doing the damn thing, and he's coming back with huge news that was announced yesterday. We're also going to discuss Briahna Joy Gray debates Zionist panel. Jesus Christ. If you are following Bree on Twitter, you have probably seen the exchange that's been taking place over the weekend in reference to the debate that she had recently. It is really bad. Like, they've really been coming after her. A lot of cringe remarks. The things that they're saying to Bree is just flat out, blatantly racist remarks from Zionists. We'll get into that debate and what I think is actually happening on a larger scale. We're also going to discuss, get ready, folks, Netanyahu is coming to America. I know you don't want him to come here, but apparently it looks like he is, thanks to Congress. We're going to get into that and this recent ceasefire proposal from the Biden administration. And of course, Marcus Cage was here from the Political Matrix to discuss Dr. Raven Rejected. So much to discuss, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't had a chance to do so, go ahead and smash that like button. Thank you. And if you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share. Fam, it's Sunday. It's Sunday, fam. I heard we got a NBA finals coming up this week, right? Anybody heard about this? I heard the Celtics are playing Dallas Mavericks. Dallas and the Celtics. I will be watching. I will be. Thank you, Eric. Thursday, fam. Thursday. Oh, I'll be live Thursday too. God damn it. Maybe I'll be able to catch some of it though afterwards. But yeah, I heard. So get excited. Gonna place a bet. Okay, let's get into this news. The Biden administration has announced a ceasefire proposal, except this proposal is not new. We'll get into that in just a second, but I want to start with the speech from Joe Biden. This is his attempt to try to bring the hostages home, but also his attempt to try to make Hamas look to be the guilty party, even though they've already accepted this proposal and Israel has not. Let's get into this speech here from Sleepwalker himself, Joe Biden.
Now to another issue. I want to give an update on my efforts to end the crisis in Gaza. For the past several months, my negotiators of foreign policy, intelligence community, and like have been relentlessly focused, not just on a ceasefire that would inevitably be fragile and temporary, but on a durable end of the war. That's been the focus, a durable end of this war. One that brings all the hostages home, ensures Israel's security, creates a better day after in Gaza without Hamas in power, and sets the stage for a political settlement that provides a better future for Israelis and Palestinians alike. Now, after intensive diplomacy carried out by my team, my many conversations with leaders of Israel, Qatar, and Egypt, and other Middle Eastern countries, Israel has offered a comprehensive new proposal. It's a roadmap to an enduring ceasefire and the release of all hostages.
Let's pause there for just a second because he kind of reveals himself. So he said that Israel has offered this new proposal, right? But I just told you that Israel has rejected the proposal. So why would Israel reject the proposal that they just offered? Let's continue.
This proposal has been transmitted by Qatar to Hamas. Today, I want to lay out its terms for the American citizens and for the world. This new proposal has three phases. The first phase would last for 6 weeks. Here's what it would include: a full and complete ceasefire, a withdrawal of Israeli forces from all populated areas of Gaza, release of a number of hostages, including women, the elderly, the wounded, in exchange for release of hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. There are American hostages who would be released at this stage, and we want them home. Additional, some remains of hostages who have been killed would be returned to their families, bringing some degree of closure to that terrible grief. Palestinians, civilians would return to their homes and neighborhoods in all areas of Gaza, including in the north.
Pause. How are Palestinians going to return to the homes that have already been destroyed? Gaza is destroyed. What homes are the Palestinian people going to be able to return to? This does not make any sense. Doesn't make any sense. Does it make sense to you that Israel would offer to completely have a ceasefire and remove themselves from Gaza? Does that make sense to you guys? Does that sound like something that Israel would say? No, it doesn't.
Humanitarian assistance would surge, with 600 trucks carrying aid into Gaza every single day. With the ceasefire, that aid could be safely and effectively distributed to all who need it. Hundreds of thousands of temporary shelters, including housing units, would be delivered by the international community. All that and more would begin immediately. During the 6 weeks of phase one, Israel and Hamas would negotiate the necessary arrangements to get to phase two, which is a permanent end to hostilities. Now, I'll be straight with you. There are a number of details to negotiate to move from phase one to phase two. Israel will want to make sure its interests are protected. But the proposal says if the negotiations take longer than 6 weeks for phase one, the ceasefire will still continue as long as negotiations continue.
Does this sound like something that Israel would propose themselves? That they would actually say, all this time that Israel has been saying have to a right to defend ourselves, and we are going to continue to try to get rid of Hamas. We will continue to fight. We are ignoring what the ICC is telling us to do to pull out of Rafah and end military operations. We will continue to fight. Now, all of a sudden, we're supposed to believe that Israel has decided to end all fire. This is terrible.
The United States, Egypt, and Qatar would work to ensure negotiations keep going. All agreements, until all the agreements are reached and phase 2 is able to begin. Then phase 2 would be an exchange for the release of all remaining living hostages, including male soldiers. Israeli forces would withdraw from Gaza, and as long as Hamas lives up to its commitments, a temporary ceasefire would become, in the words of the Israeli proposal, the cessation of hostilities permanently. End of quote. Cessation of hostilities permanently. Finally, in phase 3, a major reconstruction plan for Gaza would commence, and any final remains of hostages who've been killed would be returned to their families. That's the offer that's now on the table. And what we've been asking for. It's what we need. The people of Israel should know they can make this offer without any further risk to their own security because they've devastated Hamas forces over the past 8 months. At this point, Hamas no longer is capable of carrying out another October 7th. It's one of Israel's main objectives in this war, and quite frankly, a righteous one.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated.
So first and foremost, there were problems with a lot of things that he said in that statement. Again, this idea that Joe Biden is pretending like this is some new proposal. This is not a new proposal, right? So Medea Benjamin is already calling this out. Medea Benjamin says, make this a little bit bigger. It took the death of some 40,000 Palestinians for Biden to put forward almost the same ceasefire deal that has been on the table for months and accepted by Hamas. So I just want to remind you guys again, this is not new. This has already been on the table. So I don't know why people on social media are pretending like, oh my God, this is great news. This is a new thing. Marianne Williamson is out there on Twitter right now. I had a back and forth with her, pretending like this is a new thing. This is great. The president is actually talking about a ceasefire. This is not the first time that this deal has been proposed. And anyone on social media right now, particularly those who are political candidates, pretending like this is some newbie is a part of the propaganda. A part of the propaganda. She goes on to say he weirdly called it an Israeli proposal, but Netanyahu has not accepted it. So again, why would Israel make a proposal like this, which calls for them to remove their military completely from the area, calls for the ceasefire, and then reject their own proposal? So I don't know who is doing Biden's speeches, but people can see through this if they're paying attention. Now I want to show you part of the other propaganda that they're doing right now. Now they're trying to make it look like if this does not go through, which I told you Israel has already rejected it, now they're trying to make it seem like this will all be the fault of Hamas. Shout out to Asel Rod for highlighting this. Watch the propaganda and the talking points. News. Hamas states it views Biden's proposal for enduring ceasefire positively. Okay, that's coming from Hamas. Israel Prime Minister, we will continue the war until our objectives are met. We will continue the war until our objectives are met. So Israel does not agree with the proposal that apparently, again, did not come from Israel, has come from the Biden administration. They are not agreeing with it. It goes on to say here, Western officials, Hamas needs to accept the ceasefire deal. Watch the propaganda wheel start to work, folks. Start with Biden's tweet. This is a decisive moment. Israel has made their proposal. Hamas says it wants a ceasefire. This deal is an opportunity to prove they mean it. Hamas needs to take the deal. You see what he's doing? Next one. Antony Blinken. I spoke with several of my counterparts in the region to stress that Hamas should accept the deal. See the PR narrative going around, folks. Next one. This is Abin Ministern, German foreign official. Look at this. It's now up to Hamas to prove their commitment to ending the conflict. Everybody see they got the PR narrative. David Cameron, with a new hostage agreement on the table, Hamas must accept the deal. This is the propaganda. This is how they spin the narrative. One statement goes out from the president, and all these other puppets repeat the same talking points. And of course, it gets to trend on Twitter. What they are doing now is they are setting it up to look like if this does not go through, it will be because Hamas did not accept it, even though Hamas already accepted the deal, and Israel is the one that doesn't want to go through with it. It's all propaganda, anything to protect Israel. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm sick of it. Seriously sick of it. But I want to tell you why this is happening and why it's happening the way that it is. Because you see, the reason why the United States government did not want the ICC or the ICJ to hold Israel accountable. Two reasons. One is because most of the politicians are bought off by the Israeli lobby, so they're doing their bidding. But there's also this reason that the U.S. government can also be held accountable by the ICC. In fact, that is just what South Africa plans to do. America is next. South African minister says countries aiding Israel liable for ICC prosecution. You see this? Speaker Johnson said that if the ICC is allowed to threaten Israel's leaders, then we know that America will be next. Our response is, of course, Pander explains. So you see what's happening, folks? They know that South Africa is going to come for the United States next because our country is the one that supplied the weapons. Germany would be second after us. But we're the ones that supplied most of the weapons to contribute to the genocide of the Palestinian people in Gaza. South Africa has every right to come after us at the ICC, just like they have Israel. Every right to do so. Don't forget, it's also an election year. People are saying a lot of things to try to get what they want around here. Kenneth Roth is pointing this out as well, because I just want to show you the way they just blatantly lie to your face. You cannot go by their statements. You have to look at their actions, because they're saying all of this. We want this to end. We want a ceasefire. This is the proposal. It's all up to Hamas, even though Israel is the one that rejected it. And at the same time, they have invited Netanyahu to come to Congress. They have invited a war criminal to come to Congress. Kenneth Roth pointed this out. The ICC prosecutor is seeking an arrest warrant for Netanyahu for his war crime starvation strategy in Gaza. So congressional leaders, including Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, invite Netanyahu to speak before Congress. Shameful. So do you see what I mean when I say don't focus on their statements, pay attention to their actions? The Biden administration is full of it. Full of it. So this is from Speaker Mike Johnson. He shared this, but he's not alone. I am honored to invite Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu to address a joint meeting of Congress. Now, why is Speaker Mike Johnson honored to do so because he receives a lot of money from AIPAC. A lot. Bought and paid for. Same with Hakeem Jeffries. That's why his name is on this letter. So you'll see the address here. Congress of the United States. This was May 31st, 2024. His Excellency Benjamin Netanyahu. You see how they address this guy? His Excellency. Dear Prime Minister, last year, Congress was proud to host the Israeli President Isaac Herzog in DC to celebrate 75 years of friendship and partnership between our two democracies. Less than 3 months later, the horrific attacks of October 7th shocked the world and forced your nation into fight for its very existence. We join the state of Israel in your struggle against terror, especially as Hamas continues to hold American and Israeli citizens captive and its leaders jeopardize regional stability. See this? For this reason, on behalf of the bipartisan leadership of the United States House of Representatives, we would like to invite you to address a joint meeting of Congress. So look at the signatures. Mike Johnson, Chuck Schumer, Mitch McConnell, and Hakeem Jeffries. This is bipartisan support. Not just the Republicans, not just the Democrats, but both. So this is why, and we'll go to this here because I want to go to show you what's happening on the other end of things. Because this is why I say the things that I say. You cannot fall for the propaganda this time around again. You have to pay attention to what they are doing, not what they are saying. If Joe Biden was serious, why would you bring this war criminal to Congress? And I'm pretty sure that Netanyahu would be met with protesters. Pretty sure he would be met with that. Now, I say this because check this out. Here's Marianne Williamson. I almost called him Netanyahu. Sorry. Watch this. You see what's happening? Biden's speech on Friday is the closest we've come to the beginning of the end of the war in Gaza. His proposal is late, but at least it's happening. Once again, this deal is not new. We have already seen this proposal before. This is Marianne Williamson pretending to be ignorant on purpose. She goes on to say, Hamas has responded positively. Let's pray the Israeli far right won't be able to torpedo the plan. Okay. They already rejected it. We have to keep our eyes on what's important. And that has to do with the 2024 election. Pay attention, folks. Trump wants the following: Israeli annexation of the West Bank, legalization of the settlements, and support for the permanent Israeli military control of Gaza. The rest of the far-right GOP is right there with him, such as in this outrageous warmongering by Nikki Haley in Israel the other day. For those who wish to see genuine peace in Palestine and Israel, the defeat of Donald Trump and the GOP has to be our highest goal. So let me tell you what's happening here, okay? Marianne Williamson, who's running for president under the Democratic Party and said she was running to the left of Joe Biden, is telling people to basically, she's doing this in a sneaky way, to support Joe Biden if you want to help the Palestinian people, even though the genocide is happening under his administration. Marianne Williamson wants you to think there is a difference between Donald Trump and Joe Biden when it comes to Israel. There is no difference. Both of them are controlled by the Israeli lobby. Joe Biden has taken the most money from the Israeli lobby. So here she is trying to play this game and make the American people think, and the rest of her base, whoever still supports her, think that you would be helping out the Palestinians by supporting Joe Biden. The reality is you are not helping out the Palestinians by supporting Biden or Donald Trump. That's the reality. And Marianne Williamson knows that. This was disgusting to me. Disgusting. And so I had to say something here. I said Biden should not be rewarded for genocide. This is a horrible approach. This is no different from what Bernie Sanders said months ago. You cannot expect change by caving to corporate politicians owned by AIPAC. And this is the reason, ladies and gentlemen, that the progressive movement that was in this country never got further than it did. Because every person who runs under this label and says that we are going to fight back against the establishment, in the end, they tell you to go along with the establishment. Bernie Sanders did it twice. Now he's doing it again. Marianne Williamson is doing it. You got squad members out there doing it. They may stand up there and say they care about the Palestinian people and to stop the genocide, but they're also endorsing Joe Biden. So they're all full of it. This is why we don't get any progressive wins on a national level, because none of these people are brave enough and bold enough to hold the damn line, even when it comes to a genocide. How dare you sit there and tell people, well, you better vote for Joe Biden because it will be worse with Trump. What's worse than a genocide? Tell that to all the Palestinian Americans that have lost their family lines in Gaza, Marianne. Tell that to them. You can't even, and I've been nice. But I said it a long time ago. I said it last year. I said that Marianne Williamson was a Zionist, and I got ridiculed. We got ridiculed over at RBN for that. We told you exactly who she was. We told you what she was saying. Even from those deleted tweets, we still had the screenshots, damn it. Because at the end of the day, Marianne still wants the state of Israel to exist. It was just a couple of months ago that she said on an interview that Gaza was not occupied. What is happening here? And say what you want about me, but I was right. And I don't come say that on here often. I told you she was a Zionist, and I told you that in the end, she was going to funnel you into the Democratic Party establishment to vote for Joe Biden. So for all of you that came after me and said I was mean, and I wasn't as mean as I could have been. I was mean. I wasn't giving her a chance. I was being foolish. No, I was right, because I sniffed that shit out early on. So they're all going to start coming out of the woodwork. Now they got Marianne to do the damage. Marianne, come in and get your base to fall in line with Joe Biden, just like Bernie Sanders did. When we get to the George Galloway story, you'll see the difference between what holding the line looks like and what we had with the progressive movement in this country. We didn't hold the line. The progressive movement never held the line. Even people who supported Marianne, they have gone out and endorsed Jill Stein now. And Marianne is out here telling you to support Joe Biden in this sneaky, underhanded way. And then she did come back and say, I assure you, AIPAC loves that you think that. And I said, wait a minute now. I assure you that AIPAC owns politicians in both parties. If you really care about Palestinians, you wouldn't tell your supporters to reward genocide. But as I said over a year ago, you are a Zionist. And she said, lies and insults, so sad to me. Well, you just have to be sad. Nobody was lying. Nobody was lying about this. I told you with time, it would reveal itself. And now you see it. They're all playing this game. And she won't be the last. There will be more that claim to be progressive that will come forward and tell you, wait till we get closer to November and tell you, you got to support Joe Biden because da-da-da. Meanwhile, people are still dying in Gaza right now. And you want to take Gaza off the table, then focus on the West Bank, damn it. Because I don't see Joe Biden trying to tell Netanyahu or Israeli settlers from stealing people's homes in the West Bank. They're both owned and controlled. Both Biden and Trump support the Israeli lobby. And if you sit here and you believe that they don't, you are mistaken. We'll go to the second part, Eric, when you're ready, of Type VNC. People cannot fall for this. I will not sit up here and let my audience fall for these lies. I will not. I didn't have a show when Bernie ran in 2020. But I made sure that when I started this channel, I was not going to let people fall for this again. And Marianne took all that money from people, and she did exactly what I told you she would do. Let's go to some of the comments. The fact that our government is inviting war criminal Netanyahu here to Congress. And this fake ceasefire proposal from Joe Biden. It's all a game. Shout out to CM for being a member for 1 month. America needs to secede from Israel. I agree. Thank you, Hiru. Since we're homeless in our country, we should use the collective monthly rent, oh my God, on buying states. Interesting, Hiru. Is it over? Like, you got to talk to me more about that, Hiru. Shout out to Ty Oga for becoming a new member. Thank you, New York Varsity. This is why we need you, Sabs. I didn't understand a friggin' word he was saying. Your degree in translating Biden to English is useful. I saw that video a couple of times. Shout out to Colin from Indie News Network says Israel rejected the proposal back in May because it proposed international orgs to assist to rebuild Gaza. I noticed that Biden didn't add that provision to his proposal. Right. And you're right to call it his proposal, Colin. He's out here blatantly lying to the American people. Thank you, Jojo. My friends and family will chirp about Trump's verdict charges all day long, but won't waste a breath on holding Biden accountable for anything he's done. And it makes me sick. Yeah, that's the problem with partisan politics. Thank you, H. Dennis. Sabby, do you ever feel progressive, constant dissecting of Democrats takes the heat off Republicans? I fear they may win and the left will be stuck. I think that people are focusing more so on the Democrats because that's the administration that's in charge right now. But that being said, I'm telling people you need to leave both parties. The Republican Party is corrupt. The Democratic Party is corrupt. And I think if we're still looking at this in a duopoly way of framing, we're still going to continue to have the same problems. We're not going to get any these progressive accomplishments on a national level through the Democratic Party. And we've already seen that through Joe Biden. Thank you, Roger. Speaker Boner did same going around Obama. Corey, Netanyahu coming to Washroll, DC. Should be millions protesting in the streets. Mm-hmm. And thank you. Where is the love? New York, please vote out Schumer, Jeffries, and Torres. Yeah. They got to go. They got to go. I'll take the comment on, I think that's Rumble. Yeah. Thank you for the Rumble rant, Goo. Funny how this is the same proposal that Hamas accepted before Rafah, and Israel is like, yeah, not what they are looking for. Yeah. And I'm so glad you guys are seeing beyond the BS. I'm so glad you guys are seeing this. Thank you for this as well. Lastly, in the last 24 hours, Hamas has taken out and injured 46 soldiers. So yeah, they are taking out Hamas. Yeah, there's that too. So many lies, so many lies. Shout out to Terry for being a member of 3 months. Says Sabby, I will be going to DC next week on Gaza rally. All right, Terry. That's awesome to hear. Yeah, guys, June 8th, rally around the White House, 12 p.m. Eastern time. Check it out. Follow Answer Coalition for that rally. Thank you so much. And thank you, Cosmos. Biden is a career politician. He doesn't care about babies' lives. I'm so sick of what he is saying about Israel. 100%. But now we're going to go into a really good, positive news story, one that I think will make you guys very happy. Before we get into that, if you haven't had a chance to do so, smash that like button, guys. That helps me with the algo. Thank you so much. And if you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share. And we'll keep on moving on. Okay. There is good news coming out of the UK. And I think we can look to what George Galloway has done as a model of what we could do in this country for any type of third party movement. Yesterday, George Galloway made a huge announcement. This is something he's been planning, I guess, for quite some time. Now, you know, George Galloway did win through the Workers' Party. It's a third party in the UK. He did the damn thing, scared the hell out of Rishi Sunak, the prime minister of the UK. He was like, oh, no, how in the hell did this guy come in and win? And it makes you wonder what is changing in the UK for the people there. Well, let's start from the beginning before we get to his announcement, so you can understand what is going on. So as you know, in the UK, let me pull myself out. As you know, in the UK, they actually cannot vote for the prime minister, right? So the way that it works is the king, and in the past, the queen would actually, recommend, they would select someone that they think would be good for a prime minister. And then it goes back to the parliament and they would vote whether or not they want that person to be the prime minister or not. It's different in the United States, right? We vote for the president. Here in the UK, they don't actually get to vote for the prime minister. Well, George Galloway came up with a strategy with his Workers' Party and apparently now is putting it into motion. Let's go back to when he announced this. This was just about, I think, a month or so ago, where he said, I'm running for prime minister. Listen to this.
But I'll be leading scores of parliamentary candidates and potentially hundreds. And of course, if they were all to be elected, I might have enough support to become the prime minister. But unfortunately, in this country, we don't elect the prime minister directly. If we did, we might be better off. We've got a prime minister for whom nobody at all voted at any level anywhere. He was not even elected by his own members of parliament. But our prime minister is appointed by the king, if he's still there, on the basis that they can command the loyalty, the majority loyalty on the floor of the House, which would be of the order of 325, 326 MPs. It's exceedingly unlikely that that will ever be me. What I'm concentrating on trying to achieve is that it is not clear who has got the majority of seats, who will be able to form a government. In other words, I'm trying to bring about a hung parliament in which people like me, like you, will have some negotiating room, will have some trading room to give our vote 4 p.m. to the person who acknowledges and accepts and is ready to implement some of the key demands that we have, the foremost of which is peace, an end to Britain's role as a perpetual warmonger as the tail of the American war dog. But there are many other demands that we have also. So thanks, James, for your kind thoughts. I am running to be Prime Minister in the sense that I will be leading a long, long list of Workers' Party parliamentary candidates. And if they were all to be elected, well, then we'd be flying. But I'll be leading.
So that is huge. So let me explain what he's trying to do. He's trying to get hundreds of Worker Party candidates in Parliament, right? So we know Rishi Sunak announced that the election is going to be July 4th, I believe he said. But he's trying to get hundreds of Worker Party candidates in Parliament so that they will be the majority or could be the majority. And then they could nominate someone like George Galloway. So this kind of reminds me of the Justice Democrat strategy, but far more strategic, because Justice Democrats tried to change the Democratic Party. They went into one of the two parties. George Galloway started his own party, the Workers' Party. So that would be like third party in the UK, instead of trying to get hundreds of people to go through, Labor or something like that, right? So I don't know if maybe George Galloway paid attention to what happened with Justice Democrats and then said, whoa, I don't think that's a good idea. Maybe we should do something different, just totally outside of the two-party system. But ideally, this is a strategy that I think we should have had here in the United States. And his party, that Workers' Party, is actually growing quicker than I thought it was. So he goes a little bit deeper into this on LBC when he talks a little bit more about the plans and the strategy for this. Because I thought that this is actually pretty smart. If you think about it, if you really want to build up a third party, and we said before, like a third party movement, like that is what he is focusing on. And that is how Justice Democrats, in my opinion, would have been more effective if they had that mass movement outside of the two-party system. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand it is difficult for third parties. I totally get it. But this strategy that he's thinking about doing could actually work if they're able to get hundreds of people into Parliament. We could see some change happen politically in the UK. I don't live in the UK. I say we, but I don't live there. But it's possible that this could work. So this was his appearance about 2 months ago on LBC, a Workers' Party to announce hundreds of candidates. Listen to this.
My colleague Henry Riley reported this morning your talks with two big-name Labour MPs, Claudia Webb, who's former Labour, and Tahir Ali. Are they going to join your merry band, Mr. Galloway?
Well, I hope actually that several MPs will, and there's even a Lord. You might say, why would we accept a Lord, Nick? But there's a Labour Lord who is in talks with us, and dozens of Labour councillors, including some that were fighting. We hope that this growing coalition of people who reject the two cheeks of the same backside politics that we've got in Britain. And we hope to play the role vis-à-vis Labour that Mr. Farage and the Reform Party are playing vis-à-vis the Tories. In other words, we hope to steal their breakfast, lunch and dinner.
What's your ambition? How many candidates do you hope to field, Mr. Galloway?
I'm going to present 200 of them outside Parliament this afternoon, including, you'll like this, Monty Panesar, the ace Indian cricketer,
yes,
former England international cricketer, who...
Pause for a second before he gets into more info about the cricketer. About 200 candidates. Now think about this, guys. Imagine if Justice Democrats had 200 candidates and it was a third party movement, right? So if you want a strong third party movement in this country, you are going to have strong candidates, but you need a lot of them if you wanted to make any type of dent within Congress. It may be a little bit easier in the UK than it is in the US. I'm not incredibly sure. But I will say this Workers' Party, you already have someone who already won. So it's not like George Galloway said, I'm going to start this movement and we're going to get hundreds of people in the parliament and do yada, yada. George Galloway waited until after he won with the third party and then says, okay, let's see how we can build this up. If I was able to get in, I believe hundreds more can be able to get in as well.
Be our candidate in Southall. We've got a former Conservative UKIP member of Parliament, member of the European Parliament, I should say. So people from left, right and centre are rejecting the Tweedledee, Tweedledum politics. Some of them are very, very interesting indeed. Monty, of course, was a great left arm spinner. And so we could do with him, Nick.
Okay. What is it about your policies, do you think, that's attracting people such as Monty who want to skittle out the opposition come the general election?
Very well put. You'll hear me say that at 2 o'clock. The reality is that we are, if you like, Labour shorn of identity politics, infatuation with race and gender, wokery and greenery and quackery. We are the real deal. We are we do what we say on the tin. We stand up for the working people. And you and I are also working people. If we lost our wages, salary this week, this month, we'd be in trouble. And that's the great majority of people in this island. Our country is falling apart at the seams, Nick. We can't even control who comes into it. We lose track of the people who do. Can't defend the English Channel while we're sailing gunboats in the Red Sea. It's all gone to pot. Not since 1941 have we been in such a state. And so far, there's no Mr. Churchill to step into the breach.
You mentioned...
Let me pause here for just a second. So the Workers' Party, and how many times have you guys said that we need a Workers' Party here in the United States, right? Like, and I know we have, what's the one that's still a part of the Democratic Party? A Working Families Party. Like, that's still a part of the Democratic Party, but a third party that's just for the workers, right? So I've heard a lot of you say that's what we need here in the United States. But I think we need to pay attention to what is happening with this party in the UK, because it's not like this party is like 10 years old. From what I understand, it's only 4.5, 5 years old. This party is not that old. The Green Party has been around for decades. So look at how far they've already come with the Workers' Party already.
A Labour Lord, you mentioned some others. Mr. Galloway, any chance of any other names that you can share with me now?
I can't. If it was just you and me, I would, but you have a considerable audience, deservedly so. So I won't, if you'll forgive me. It's not seemly, but I can confirm that there are several Labour members of Parliament, one Labour Lord, and I'm going to say dozens, at least a dozen, Labour councillors who will defect either this week or more probably next. It's a growing party. We've quadrupled in size since my victory in Rochdale, when, as you well know, I got more votes than all the other major parties put together. Quite an achievement.
At the time.
Okay, did everybody hear that part? They have quadrupled since he won. So you see, this is what I was saying before. There's a lot of focus on the presidential election, and I know I talk about it as well, but I also bring on local candidates onto this show as well, because the thing is, obviously, you know, George Galloway ran for to be a member of parliament, okay? And he won through the third party. Now that party gets more promotion and more press. I mean, didn't we all cover this when he won? I think like everybody covered this when he won, right? So it's a big deal. So if we had that same strategy here in the United States, we don't even have a third party member in Congress. We don't. We have some registered independents And some of them became independents after they already were a part of the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. But we don't really have, I know some people may say, what, Thomas Massie, isn't he still Republican, even though he's libertarian, but I think he's still with the Republican Party. We don't have it. We don't have Green Party members in Congress. You need one to win. You need one to get through to implement some type of a movement and change. So solely focusing on just the presidential elections, it actually takes attention away from the candidates that are running for those congressional seats that are running third party. This is why I recently had on the two young women that are running for congressional seats through the Green Party. These people need to come on they need to be invited onto other shows. I know they haven't, I know they've been invited to and where they haven't. They need to be invited onto other shows. And that's how you build the third party movement. But if your sole focus for a third party movement in this country is just on the presidential election, well, then you're not building that third party infrastructure at the local level, which is incredibly needed. That is important. George Galloway gave his speech yesterday, and he had quite a few things to say. Let's go ahead and dive into this because he was doing the damn thing. He calls out Keir Starmer and many more.
Rivers of blood are running in Gaza, and Keir Starmer has supported it from the first day and until this day. And that is Keir Starmer's biggest problem. Because there are millions of people in this country of whom you are a mere snapshot. I make that point because most of the people in this audience are white English people. They try to tell you that the only people who care about beheaded children in Gaza are Muslims. That's a lie. All Muslims, of course, care about it. But millions of other British people care about it too.
Same thing here in the United States. They keep trying to make it seem like the only people that are at the pro-Palestinian protests are people that are, Muslim, when a lot of those protesters are Jewish protesters. Same thing here.
I estimate more than 5, maybe 7 million people in Britain are acutely distressed about what they're watching. And most of that 7 million used to vote Labour. In fact, Keir Starmer's counting on them to vote Labour. And if they don't vote Labour, how does he win any kind of landslide majority? Do the maths. If those millions vote for independence, like Jeremy Corbyn, for independence, like Andrew Feinstein, who's fighting Starmer, for the Workers' Party, like me, like Aroma, and the hundreds of other candidates that we are fielding, if those millions vote for us, I'll be in the running to be the Prime Minister of Britain, not Keir Starmer. And
so do you guys think that could happen? I know some of you that are watching live in the UK. Do you think that could happen, right? Like millions of people in the UK voting for those Worker Party candidates. Do you think that this change could come? I don't live there, so I'm asking you guys. Do you think that this change could come? Like, how are you guys feeling? I mean, George Galloway did win. So it makes me wonder, is this going to bring about a big change in the UK?
So that's Starmer's biggest problem, and as so often, Shakespeare provides the words to describe the dilemma. That blood is on his hands. All the perfumes of Arabia cannot extinguish these damned spots of blood that are upon him. Moreover, he can't go on, he can't go back. Like Julius Caesar crossing the Rubicon, steeped in blood so far that you cannot work out whether it is bloodier to go on or to go back. He can't change his unequivocal, without qualification, support for Zionism and Israel, because then the people he has so earnestly worked to bring to his side will turn against him.
Yep.
And neither is there a cost-free way of continuing. Every child that's murdered, every mother that is slaughtered, every father scrambling amongst the rubble, trying to find their loved ones, every one of those is a nail in the political reputation of Keir Starmer and the so-called Labour Party that it supports. So
we'll go ahead and pause it there. You can check out the full speech there. It's actually pretty long. It's on Sky News. It's George Galloway's Workers' Party of Britain launch election campaign. So check that out on Sky News. But he was interviewed right after this fiery speech. And I want you to hear some of the things that he said here.
Mr. Galloway, barely 3 months since your by-election win and you're on the general election campaign trail. Tell us what you're hoping for the Workers' Party in this campaign.
Well, we're standing enough candidates that if everyone votes for them, I'll be the Prime Minister. So that's a big task in a very short period of time. We're only 4 years old, and the party only really took off in the Rochdale by-election.
So they're only, my correction, I think I said 4.5 years old. They're only 4 years old. And look at how far they've come already, right? They're moving pretty quickly and they are growing.
And yet we've managed to find all these hundreds of candidates. We're all self-funded, by the way, paying their own election expenses. And our party is 4 times bigger than it was 100 days ago. So our task is simple: to persuade the maximum number of people to vote for our policies of peace, equality, justice, an end to the slaughter in Gaza, and a new direction for Britain. It's all in our manifesto. I commend it to people. It's a sharp difference from the two cheeks of the same backside that Labour and the Conservatives represent.
I love how he calls it the two cheeks, because I always called it, two wings of the same bird, but it's interesting to me how he calls it two cheeks of the same backside. Two cheeks.
Success look like for the Workers' Party on the 4th of July?
Well, a parliamentary breakthrough. We've got one elected member of parliament. We have to turn that into many.
How many's many?
I'd be extremely disappointed if it's not in double figures. How high the double figures would go, I don't know. But if we can get, let me just pluck a number out of the air, if we can get 200,000 votes across the country, and maybe much more than that, we move up into the Premier League in parliamentary terms. We qualify for state financial support. We are allowed to table motions in the Commons, initiate debates, always be called at Prime Minister's question time, and so on. That will be important, especially if Starmer is the Prime Minister. Because if he's the Prime Minister, I'll be the leader of the real opposition. And everyone will be able to see that. I'll be the one speaking for the people that Labour has abandoned on a daily basis in Parliament with our MPs. That will begin to change politics in Britain forever.
So George Galloway essentially did what Justice Democrats could have done, right? Officially leave the two-party system and start this type of third-party movement. They had the energy, they had the money to do so. George Galloway also did what Bernie Sanders was too chicken to do. Leave the two-party system officially. Yes, he's a registered independent, but he still caucuses with the Democrats and he still runs with the Democratic Party, and build a third-party movement. And I wish we had voices like George Galloway and Claire Daly. I wish we had those types of political figures in our country, people who are not afraid to stand up to the duopoly and call it out for what it is. So this is huge news. I wish George the best of luck. I know this is not something that is easy to do, but hey, you got to give claps for trying to do something different and just to break away from that system. So I could never, fault him for trying to do that. And we'll have to see what happens. Let's see what you guys think about that. Well, shout out to Ben for becoming a new member. What's up, Ben? CJ, Sabby, it's the party leader of the party with the most seats that gets to be prime minister by going to the palace to then formally ask the monarch to form a government. Yes, right. Thank you, CJ. I'm going to get this right, UK guys. I'm going to get this right. It's just so different what I'm used to, but I'll get it right. I hope he can make a dent, need change. Jacqueline said, but still simping for the Labour Party, which is problematic considering what a Zionist Keir Starmer is. Shout out to Iman Galazadeh for becoming a member. What's up, Iman? Greetings, Miss Kiwi. George Galloway is really playing hardball. I love it. Pardon the Chris Matthews show title pun. You guys remember Hardball with Chris Matthews? Thank you, Jay. Gigi has been trying to convince Richard Medhurst to join him in the parliament. Hopefully, he'll give him a position in his cabinet if he wins. That would be interesting, huh? Would be interesting. Jacqueline says, Tories are finished in the UK. But the worry is that Labour will win by a majority and we'll have Starmer winning by a landslide. So we go for the right-wing Labour seats. We go for those Zionist MP. Interesting. And thank you for this as well. Sabby, I'm seriously hoping so, but people are feeling very negative and demoralized. They can't see the possibilities. Man. DC. Sabby, hard to say. Corporate media in the US will not allow a third-party candidate, at least not a legit one. How do we defeat that? By amplifying independent media. Hey, think about it this way, fam. Some of these independent media channels that have over 1 million subscribers, they get more viewers than CNN does. By amplifying independent media. That's how you do it. That's the way. Thank you, Roger. Rally for reparations in DC, June 15th, y'all. Yes. And if you see that, Eric, you look that up. I forgot to put that in there. You look that up. I'll shout out the announcement for that. If you see it, rally for reparations. Thank you so much. And I'll take the comment on Rockfin. It's the rock to the fin. It's the rock to the fin. Rock to the fin. Thank you for the tip, Skip. It is simple. All independents vote for whomever is not funded by AIPAC. There you go, Skip. Thank you. Okay. Now, hit that like button if you haven't had a chance. Bam. Thank you. If you're new, like, sub, and share. Going to the Bree story. Here we go. Briahna Joy Gray has been heavily attacked on Twitter over the weekend. I know it's still part of the weekend and it is still going on. She participated in a debate panel where even one of the moderators attacked her. So again, I think people need to decide whether or not they want to be a moderator or they want to be a part of the debate. We've talked about this before, but she has been heavily attacked. And apparently this panel took place in front of an audience of Zionists based on what I heard from the applause. So I want to bring this up here so you guys can see who is on this panel. Constantine, he is actually the moderator, but doesn't act like one. Bree, Michael Monahan, Eli Lake, and Jake Klein. So let's go ahead and dive into this. There's different parts of this debate that I do want to focus on. The first piece here is about the numbers, the death toll in Gaza. This is the first part of the issue that I want to focus on that they debated on. And I just want you to see the lack of disrespect that they had for Bree as well. Let's dive in.
Briahna, I want to come back to the numbers point because I think it's really important. I'm going to do something which is blatantly going to fail, but I'm going to try anyway, which is ask every single one of you to answer that question very briefly, which is how many civilian casualties do you think there have been in Gaza and how many Hamas fighters have been killed? And we'll just go around everybody and give me a figure.
I think it's really important to note that Israel has accepted and verified Hamas's numbers routinely over years and years and years. And at no point has the Hamas numbers that have come out in the immediate wake of an incident been revised. Has there been a determination that those numbers were an estimation so that Israel would have to recalibrate its choice to rely on those numbers? When we're talking about, remember we're talking about Hamas numbers.
Just give me the numbers, though. Just give me the number.
Hamas is the government. I did a really short opening, so I hope you don't mind if I...
Fine.
Hamas is the government of Gaza. So in Gaza, the person who picks up your trash from outside of your house is Hamas. The person who runs the hospital and gives you your, childhood vaccines or whatever is Hamas. Literally everybody is Hamas, and the Hamas Health Ministry, which has been keeping these numbers, has been relied upon by international organizations and by Israel up until this point, at which it is, I think, inconvenient for Israel to accept these numbers that are very, very high. These numbers have been stuck at about 34,000 for over a month now because everyone who used to do the counting in the Hamas Health Ministry is dead. The hospitals have all been destroyed. Every hospital in Gaza has been destroyed, partly because of mythology, like the idea that a Hamas headquarters was under Al-Shifa Hospital, which was disproven roundly. It absolutely was.
Briahna, you're entitled to your opinion, but not your own facts.
It was. There was no Hamas headquarters under Al-Shifa Hospital.
Briahna,
there hasn't been, and there continues not to be.
Let me.
But the consequence
let me just ask this again, because I asked you about fighters. I asked you about Hamas fighters.
Let me pause there for a second. So the reason why I believe she's explaining all of that is because how many times has mainstream media, also Zionists, parroted the narrative that the numbers are not true, that it's coming from the health ministry, so you can't believe anything that the health ministry is saying. So that's the reason why I believe she went into that explanation. They constantly do interrupt her throughout this debate, though.
So 34,000 total.
What we know is
how many fighters?
3/4 of those are women and children.
So how many of those are fighters?
So even if all of the men were Hamas, which we know there aren't, because, for example, just a month ago, we saw the drone footage of an IDF drone tracking and shooting 4 Palestinian children as they were going through the rubble of their own house. I mean, there's innumerable examples of seeing people who are not Hamas being killed.
Okay.
Israel obviously notoriously shot 3 of its own hostages that were stripped down nude trying to get free. So even if you count whatever the remaining 3/4 as being Hamas, it still remains the case that 3/4 of the 34,000 are women and children.
So how many would you say are fighters?
I rely on the same numbers that everybody else does. I'm saying even worst case scenario.
So what are those numbers?
You're asking me to do math? What's 1/4 of 34?
Well, I don't think all the men who've been killed are
8,000 or so.
Do you agree with that, Jake?
It's approximately right. I mean, the numbers that I have, these are the numbers believed by U.S. intelligence. Around 35,000 total killed, 70% women and children. That's 24,500, and then not all the men are going to be Hamas
so
fighters.
Somewhere 8,000. Yeah,
that's the best. Yeah, that's the best number.
I will come back to you guys. Right. Do you agree with those numbers first? I just want to establish this as a baseline.
No, I do not.
No. Okay.
Let me explain. I think a lot of people may have missed the story, but Hamas's own Gaza Ministry of Health revised downward their own casualty estimates about a month ago.
That's not true.
So let's pause. So again, this is another lie that is being spread and parroted by Zionists. Guys, this has already been debunked multiple times that story was not true, that they did not say that their numbers were incorrect. So you see, this is a trick that we see happen over and over again, where when you see these debates that happen with Zionists, they continue to repeat news information that has already been debunked like weeks ago. You see it on the debates with Piers Morgan's show, right? You see it on this debate panel. They're repeating those narratives, anything to make their case that Israel is the good guy and the Palestinian people are the bad ones.
That's not true.
Yes, it is.
No, that's false. What happened is that they said that about 11,000 people did not have all the identifying information. The United States continues to believe the total number. That's false.
I don't know that the U.S. government.
I'll put out sources online.
What's your number? Eli, what's your number?
First of all, let me. I'm not trying to get out of it, and I'm not trying to. But I'm saying I think the most prudent thing to say is that, especially in the fog of war, we don't actually know
who was a civilian and who was a fighter. And we usually find out that these things are wildly different, just like we hear initial reports of massacres that turn out not to be massacres, or we hear initial reports of things that look fine and turn out to be much worse. There's a lot of things that in the heat of a battle, in the heat of a war, we can't possibly know. But I'm comfortable saying that it's telling that some 10,000 or 11,000 people they can't identify doesn't mean, I mean, I think that would be reason for some sort of skepticism at that point, considering that is their job. More.
So let me tell you something. So this is a part of the propaganda, right? So notice the heavy focus on the numbers. How many of those people were actually civilians? How many of them are actually fighters? Do we really know? Do we really know for sure? Maybe we should question that. The reason why they are focusing on that is because they're trying to use that as an excuse or some type of pushback towards the word genocide. That's why they are trying to focus on the numbers and say, well, we don't really know if all of those people that were killed were actually civilians. The people in the community know. The people in the community know if those people were civilians or fighters or not. Regardless of the matter, the point is this. What Israel has done to Gaza as a response to what happened on October 7th is above and beyond, and it is disgusting. You have nurses, you have doctors who have traveled to Gaza to help treat people there who have said on national television they have never seen anything like it. Doctors Without Borders, never seen anything like it. So that in itself tells you something. Now we're going to go to the next part here. I want to make sure I got my sections lined up just right. The next part here where I think I just said this part. I just want to make sure. Yeah. Fast forward in a little bit here to 2905. This part here as well. Watch what they do.
Part of why the Hamas health ministry is very good at tracking the deaths is because, and by the way, Israel isn't contesting, apart from for political reasons, took a while for them to start contesting these numbers. It's because Israel knows where every single person in Gaza lives. Gaza is under the control of Israel. It is an occupied territory according to international law. And as a consequence, they know the names and ages and addresses of all the people that have been killed. That is why Palestinians have been able to put up slideshows where you can scroll through. It takes about, I think, 7 minutes to scroll through the names of just the 13,000 children.
Just the 13,000 children. So like I said before, the people in the community know. And if you guys haven't seen that video, I've seen that video before on social media of all the names of the kids that were killed. So they have been keeping track. Now, why would they keep track? Because this is not the first time that Israel has attacked Palestinian people. This has been going on for decades, right? This isn't the first time. Israel has been known to go into Gaza prior to October 7th and mow the lawn. So they have become accustomed to keeping track of the names and the people and the places and all those types of things so that they know who is gone. They know who is missing.
That have been killed with their ages next to their names. These are real people. And so even if you think every adult, including all of the women, were Hamas and deserve to die, I think there's a really important question as to whether or not you think the 13,000 children who have been killed, some of whom we've watched been tracked down and killed by Israeli drone cameras, are the adequate consequences, collateral damage for this allegedly just war.
Okay.
So Briahna, if the reason that you trust those numbers is because they have the specific information, well, doesn't that also mean that you wouldn't trust numbers that were then, they couldn't say anything, information about this 10 or 11,000?
What are you talking about? I don't understand.
When they revised their numbers, they said these are people that are part of the totals and we don't have names or anything else with that.
Corroborating evidence is what I'm describing. So for a lot of the deaths, they're able to.
You don't have any corroborating evidence for
one
a third of your
one at a time.
Can you respond to the 13,000 children and whether or not you think that they're
I'm happy to
appropriate
respond to the 13,000
collateral
children.
damage?
Can you respond to whether or not you still think?
So yet.
What?
Can you respond? You said
okay,
you're happy
well, you
to
haven't
respond, but
answered
you
my
haven't.
question. You just told me
I asked
that
the question
the
first,
reason that
Eli.
you trust the numbers is because they've painstakingly
That's not
given
what I said.
the names of the agents.
No.
Yes, you did. We
I
all
said
heard
one.
it.
I said one of the
Yes, you did. And then I asked you if that's the case.
They all end up the same at the
Everybody
end in
stop.
every other
Everybody
one.
stop. Everybody stop.
Wait a minute.
Everybody stop.
So see all of the tension. See all of the attention. So again, the question is proposed by the moderator. See how much time they've spent focusing on just the numbers. And by the way, this isn't all of it. I jumped ahead because we would be here for quite a while for that part of the conversation. But notice what they are doing, right? So the moderator, this is intentional. Because again, it's taking away from everything that has happened to the Palestinian people prior to October 7th, which is what they don't want to discuss. They don't want to focus on, not Bree, but the Zionists that are on that panel. And then when you start to bring that up, they are very quick to interrupt you, to cut you off, to make sure you don't tell the truth about the history. So there's a lot of focus on the numbers here. So again, for those just joining, the moderator is this gentleman here with the glass in his hand. Okay, his name is Konstantin. He's the moderator.
I said
Everybody
one.
stop.
I said
Briahna.
one of the reasons, one of the many reasons that you can
Okay.
come to trust the numbers is because there are these records that can corroborate many of the deaths. Moreover, I would point to other instances. For example, the fact that a CNN investigation showed that Israel has desecrated 16 cemeteries in Gaza since this conflict started.
Okay.
Is
We
Hamas
get-
under the cemetery? At what point do we acknowledge that this is an effort to destroy a community so that no one ever wants to return and ethnically cleanse them out of Gaza permanently?
Okay, cool. So we'll leave that part there because one of the interesting things is
Okay, and then we're going to move forward to the next part here. We'll get to the Danes comment that some of you probably saw on social media already. We're moving on to this part here. I just want to make sure my timestamps are okay. Just making sure I got that right. This piece here, then we jump in.
Pointing to the fact that, like half the population of Gaza today are the actual people or the descendants of the 700,000 who were purged, ethnically cleansed from the land that is now called Israel and the Nakba. So I'm sure many of you can imagine what you would do in that sort of a scenario. If when your grandparents were young and your parents were their children in their house, they had been chased out of wherever you live at 13 Pine Drive or whatever, and you were forced to move a state over in a refugee camp. That's constructively what Gaza is. It's a refugee population of 2.3 million people. And you can look over there. You are close enough. You can Google Maps if you have Google.
and I'm going to put this to them. I'm going to put this question to them. But what should Israel have done?
That there's a family that's literally living in a house that you might still have keys to, tending olive groves that were your family's line of business if they haven't cut those all down. And so the people who have had that experience, as you can imagine if you were in their shoes, are never going to let up, wanting to have the right to return to their homes. This is
Never going to let up, wanting to have the right to return to their homes. This part is very important because the number of times people have said that, well, they were offered a two-state solution and they turned it down. They have never been offered the right to return, which means they are still refugees. Like, what was done to the Palestinian people is wrong. And I don't need to sit up here and listen to people tell me that because they read a book and because they follow a certain religion, that this is all supposed to happen or should happen because of their religious belief. Religion is a belief. What has happened to the Palestinian people is a part of the Zionist project. The goal was to cleanse the land and make the land only for Israelis. Even people who come there to settle, and we call them settlers. So let's just keep it real. We talked about this before. How many people in Netanyahu's cabinet are indigenous to the land? I'll wait. How many? Those aren't even their names. And if you look it up, you'll see it yourself. They changed their names to make it sound like they're indigenous to the land, but they're not. So a lot of the people in Netanyahu's cabinet are Eastern European Western, they're European. They kick these people off of their land. That is no different from what has happened in other countries across the world. This is the final stage of colonialism. And that is the best way that I can describe this. If it's just about religion, folks, why are they beating the Hasidic Jews in Israel in the streets that don't want to follow Zionism? Why are they beating them if it's just about religion? If it's just about religion, why did they sterilize Ethiopian Jewish women against their will? If it's just about religion, they're Jewish. Everybody knows what's happening here. The problem is the people on that stage, and you're going to see this in a second, the people on that stage believe that they are entitled to that land and the Palestinians should not be there. And for Germany, and I got something to say to you, Germany, okay? Because I spent part of my childhood growing up in Germany. You got some damn nerve. For you to sit up there and beat your own people, the protesters in the streets, because they're advocating for the Palestinian people. For you to treat them in such a way, I didn't see you try to give up any of your damn land. Where did the atrocities happen? Why are the Palestinian people having to pay for what happened in Germany and Poland? Why haven't they given up their damn land? Everybody start asking that question. Ask it. Let's continue.
It's not a kind of 2,000 years ago sort of a dream. This is
Are there lots
in my
of Pakistanis
lifetime.
who want to return to India?
In my lifetime, you purged me from my literal home where I have keys to, and now it's being occupied by someone who maybe immigrated from Europe, maybe immigrated from Brooklyn, and that injustice really hits home. On top of that, you've been denied the right to have any kind of state, a passport, an airport, a country, the kind of things that constitute a country, right? Joe Biden is now spending your tax dollars building a port in Israel, in Gaza rather, because Gaza isn't allowed to have those kinds of infrastructure, basic infrastructure projects on its own. So what absolutely needs to be done is for there to be a right of return for the people who were purged out of Israel.
So Briahna, just so I understand.
100%. And by the way, that port faded away into the ocean, by the way. That port is no longer usable. Really bad infrastructure. Pretty predictable since the United States government were the ones that built it. Pretty predictable. A very good point there from Bree. And one more part from this debate here that I want to highlight as well. And then we'll get to that cringe comment about the Danish people. Here we go.
Netanyahu did not deliver suitcases full of cash. He arranged for the Qataris to give development aid to Hamas because no one in Europe, for good reason, no one in America for good reason, wanted to actually have the, dirty up their hands by giving various kinds of money to a humanitarian group. But given the fact that they were the sovereigns of Gaza, someone needed to provide for basic infrastructure.
It's UNRWA.
That's what happened.
Hold on.
That's what happened. That's what happened. And it wasn't Netanyahu's policy. This is a myth that lots of people believe that Netanyahu did this for some cynical reason. He did it because the entire rest of the, civilized world, like the United States, was saying, you have to figure out some way to get some development aid into Gaza, even though I understand that no other groups really want to, except for Qatar, of course, wants to deal with Hamas. It wasn't.
Pay close attention to the vocabulary that is being used. The word civilized is used throughout. Pay close attention to that.
Because oh, wow, we really like Hamas launching rockets at our country every 6 months. Come on.
So
this is like,
can't
it's
have it
just
both ways, Eli.
I want to let Michael... Guys, I've given you both... I'll come back to you in a second.
I have it in front of me.
I need to ask Michael a question, and I'll come back to you.
Please, it's 2 sentences.
Two sentences. I'm going to hold you to
that. This is the Netanyahu quote. You can judge if...
Let me do the moderating. I'll take care of it. 2 sentences.
He's accurate. Anyone who wants to thwart the establishment of a Palestinian state has to support bolstering Hamas and transferring money to Hamas. This is part of our strategy, to isolate the Palestinians in Gaza from the Palestinians in the West Bank.
When did he say that?
That's Netanyahu in 2019 in a meeting with the Likud leaders.
Okay. 2019.
2019, Netanyahu made that statement. So notice how Konstantin, who's in the middle, who's the moderator, notice how he had no idea. This is like, oh, when did he say that? Oh, what did you do? They pretend like they never heard these things because they're hoping that you don't do your research. They were hoping that Bree didn't do her research. They haven't been paying attention. Now, Bree is being heavily attacked online right now. In particular to this clip here. Now, Katie Halper actually did shout this out. She said it takes next level stupidity to not even know how to effectively smear someone. Pick one dishonest narrative. In this case, she's either crazy or corrupt. So that is coming from, I messed up. Oh no. Eric, can you bring that back? Sorry. I hit the back button, the Katie Halper one. But they were trying to smear Bree and calling her crazy, corrupt, like all that kind of stuff. And it was really clear, like what they were doing. And they're like, well, no, what she says actually makes sense. But again, when you start like spitting facts and truths and things like that, they say that you're crazy or corrupt. Thanks so much, Eric. So let me continue on here because I accidentally clicked off of it. Sorry. So she goes on to say, oh, here it is. Here we go. For those who were blocked by the lying racist coward smearing Bree, here's a screenshot. At least Hen gets paid by the Israeli government to be a shill. Sad to see the other one doing it for free. And you'll see Josh Fox here says she lost her mind and her soul a long time ago. My deeply held convictions on this horrifying crisis are very clear and complex. Happy to share them always. I condemn the bloody, criminal, hateful extremists of both Netanyahu and Hamas. Peace must be achieved through the mutual recognition and self-determination of Jews. So you see how he's framing this, right? Okay. So she came here and she said it takes next level stupidity to not even know how to effectively smear someone. Pick one dishonest narrative. In this case, she's either crazy or corrupt. She's neither, of course, but you give away the game when you can't commit to the bit. And here's the actual vid. This is the video that has a lot of people up in arms. Listen to this.
How do we get to a solution?
So I think that we have to not talk about Arabs as though they're somehow constitutionally different than Danes. I don't know why we would essentialize populations in that way. We have to be open to the idea
Danes don't
that
do
the people...
October 7th?
Okay, let's make this a little bit louder because this is the part here that I think has triggered a lot of people.
So I think that we have to not talk about Arabs as though they're somehow constitutionally different than Danes. I don't know why we would essentialize populations in that way. We have to be open to the idea
Danes don't
that
do
the people...
October 7th?
So they're talking about Danish people. And he said, did Danes do October 7th? Now, again, he's the moderator. I just want to remind you guys, he's the moderator. So why is he now debating?
Constitutionally different than Danes. I don't know why we would essentialize populations in that way. We have to be open to the idea
Danes don't
that
do
the people...
October 7th?
Wait a minute. Muslims didn't do October 7th.
Not since the Vikings.
Gaza...
So do you see what's happening here? They see all Palestinians as Hamas. You see what I mean? So his argument, did Danes do October 7th? Bree responds with, well, Muslims didn't do October 7th, but that's what they see. They see them all as Hamas. And I'm going to get to the Danish bit in just a second.
Didn't do October 7th, and if you're adopting the worldview that everyone in Gaza, 2.3 million people, are responsible, then you are very much in line with Netanyahu's right-wing government, who thinks that and therefore thinks it's appropriate to violate international law by doing collective punishment on the population, literally starving them to death, having them on the brink of famine, killing 13,000 kids. There was a very passionate description of the graphic reality of October 7th at the begining of this. The answer is...
You're not answering my question.
I'll answer the question. I'm sorry, I do feel like a lot of responses...
20 more seconds. Okay. 20 more seconds. The solution, please, go.
There has to be a one-state solution, which means that there cannot... When Hamas is talking about eliminating Israel, it's talking about not killing all of the Jews. It's about eliminating the idea...
Okay.
It's about...
Leave it there. We'll leave it there. We'll leave it there.
It's about... Let me just finish, sir. Can I just finish the sentence? It's about eliminating the idea of a Jewish state. Ending a Jewish state, ending an ethno-national state, and having a state more like what we have in the United States of America.
Okay, let's see if I got to the civilized part. I just want to make sure. Yeah, because I wanted to show this part as well. Let me pull this up here. This part right here. The Danes argument. So this is the one from Briahna Wu, right? So Briahna Wu says, here's Briahna Joy claiming Hamas does not want to genocide Jews despite it being in their charter, claiming they want a peaceful one-state solution and that Muslims were not involved in October 7th. This is a delusional fantasy multiplex. So the thing that I wanted to mention there is that, again, how many times have we corrected that Hamas's charter has been rewritten? So they're talking about things that were in their charter from decades ago compared to the new one now. Again, that's on purpose. That's intentional for them to constantly repeat incorrect information. So Bree retweeted this and she said, moments after one of the pro-Zionists on the panel argued that Muslims were unsuitable for cohabitation, unlike Danes to wild applause, I make a forceful argument against ethno-nationalism and Islamophobia, and was the case through the debate. The moderator interjected at every turn. So to the Danes part, and this is what I want people to understand, this Danes part about being civilized. So that is blatantly racist. What they're doing when they make those comments and they say, well, you know, we'd rather have like the Danish people because they don't do those things and they're civilized and the Arab people are not civilized. What they're basically telling you is that the European way is civility, that Europeans are civilized. And when they're telling you that the Danes are civilized, they're also telling you that everyone else is not. It is blatant racism. And I don't know how Bree even stayed up on that panel. I really don't know how, but it is blatant racism, you guys. You have to see the forest through the trees. They may mention the Danish people, but it's not just about the Danish people. Where do the Danish people live? Where are they from? They are in Europe. Again, a lot of those settlers that live in Israel are European. There's a reason why they don't allow the DNA test in Israel. And they change the names to make it seem like they're indigenous to the land. A lot of them are not indigenous. So that speaks to the colonial mindset once again. This is why I continue to tell you, this is the final stage of colonialism. So when they tell you they would much rather have the Danes because they are civilized, they want Eurocentric people. Because a lot of them are Eurocentric people. It's blatantly racist. Blatantly racist. Now, she brought up another point on Twitter because, like I said, people are constantly attacking her. She said, did apartheid South Africa have a right to exist? And this is another question you'd pose to people. The same people who sit up there and continue to defend Nelson Mandela and defend his fight against apartheid South Africa. Completely different position when it comes to Israel. Why is that? No, apartheid South Africa did not have the right to exist. No, it didn't. So people are mad about that, angry about it. And August V brought up a really good point. Listen to this, because people are saying, oh, well, Nelson Mandela didn't, Okay, so this person, Yuri, said, what's going on in South Africa is not far from it. That being said, I don't recall Mandela calling to kill all white people in Africa. Have you? Because the Palestinians and their allies do that literally every day. So you see what's happening, folks? You see what's happening? Who's on the videos, the viral TikTok videos, saying that they want all the Palestinian people dead? Who's on the viral videos making fun of the Palestinian people? Who's on the viral videos calling Palestinian animals and savages? Okay, but do you see how they point the finger at the Palestinians? So August came in and said, there is not a genocide of whites or anyone in South Africa nor the continent writ large. Listen to this. Mandela very explicitly called for the end of white minority rule in South Africa, very, very explicitly, and was jailed for it. Bree is simply calling for the end of Jewish minority rule in what was once called Palestine, and to replace it with a true liberal democracy. You don't have to agree with her view, and one can make a fine argument that with Israel, there should be an exception. I disagree with that. I don't think there should be any, like, again, there's the supremacy coming in. But that's not a reason to lie about what Bree said. This person goes on to say, listen to this. I am a Zionist and I will always be a Zionist. But can we please stop assuming everyone who is not is seeking to kill every Jew? You see what's happening here? This is the worst kind of identity politics and cancel culture, which I thought you were against. So you guys see this? Now, do we have... I don't think that's the right tweet. Yeah, I don't know why that's there. That's weird. Hold on one second. I had one more that I wanted to put up about Briahna Wu, because with her, make sure I got this here. Yep. With her, I want to show you something as well, because she's trying to both sides Israel, but she's a part of the smear campaign against Bree. And I want to show you her racism too. Look at this. I'm not rooting for death. I have called for a ceasefire repeatedly, and I support our president's efforts in the ceasefire. Also strongly publicly stood against Rafah. But I'm also smart enough. Okay, watch this now. She responded to Bree. I'm also smart enough to understand just because something is bad, it's not a genocide. Genocide requires intent. Pause. Haven't we seen plenty of videos and verbiage from Israel showing that there is intent? Okay. Briahna playing this game. The truth is, you are a liar and you misinform your audience. You morally load arguments because you can't win them with the truth. You don't deserve, let's highlight this. Briahna Wu is a white woman. We're gonna show you this. You don't deserve the opportunities our country has given you. You are more entitled than any white man I have ever met. So first up here, she insults Bree's intelligence and says, I am smart enough. That's her way of saying that Bree is not smart enough. Then she continues to tell Bree, you don't deserve the opportunities our country has given you. She told a black woman, you don't deserve the opportunities our country has given you. Descendants of slaves built this country, Briahna. You see how they show just how racist they really are? I told you. Let them reveal their self. I'll tell you who she is in just a second, too. Then she goes on to say, you are more entitled than any white man I have ever met. Everybody see this? Briahna Wu. Now let's see who Briahna is. Check this out, fam. First of all, I'm pissed as fuck. She's in my state. She's in Massachusetts and she's in Dedham, so she ain't around many black folk. But listen to this. Executive Director of Rebellion PAC. Executive Director of Rebellion PAC. That is Cenk Uygur's PAC. Cenk Uygur, come get your girl. How does Cenk Uygur feel about Briahna Wu's comments? telling black people they don't deserve come get your girl, Gene. Come get your girl. That is Jinx Pack. Briahna Wu. I told you, the things that you are hearing them say about Palestinians, if they feel that way about Palestinian people, what do you think they're saying about black people behind closed doors? Only now it's not even behind closed doors anymore. It's out in the open. And Briahna Wu reminds me of some of them. Again, she's supposed to be part of this progressive coalition. This woman was running for Congress, former candidate for the U.S. House in Massachusetts. This woman was running for office. This racist woman in Massachusetts was running for office. Cenk Uygur, come get your girl. Briahna Wu is exactly the type of racist, liberal Karen you would encounter in Massachusetts. Thank you for exposing yourself, Briahna Wu. Thank you for exposing yourself. And she had the audacity to run for office. This is why I continue to tell you, we can't work with some of these people. This is why we can't work. You can't work with everybody. This is why. Because they letting you know just how racist they are. Whether you like Brie or not, Brie is a Harvard-educated lawyer. So for you to sit up there and insult her intelligence, then tell her that she needs to be lucky to have the benefits that our country gave to her, Briahna Wu is showing you that she also represents the same sense of supremacy. Briahna Wu is showing you that she still has a colonial mindset. And she was a progressive. Imagine that. Well. Katrina said, I grew up with Karen B's like her for real. Yeah, it's all out there. It's all out there. Expose. So the way that people are attacking her right now, it's crazy over this debate. Crazy over this debate. Skylar says, and this goes to show it's not just white conservatives that can be racist as fuck. White liberals and even progressives can be racist with a colonial mindset. Bingo. That's what she really thinks. And honestly, if she thinks that way about Brie, who is a Harvard educated lawyer, if she thinks that way about her, what do you think? How do you think Briahna Wu thinks about the black woman that works at Dunkin' Donuts? Kudos to Brie for hanging in there. I don't know how she hung in there that long. I really don't, because I would have had to go. Like, it's bad, but it was obvious. You guys watch the full debate because it's obvious the audience was full of Zionists. What was that? I was trying to pull up a comment there. What's that, Colin? Her husband is Asian. That don't mean shit. That don't mean anything. Don't mean anything. He may have the same opinions that she has. Boy, I tell you. Someone said hands off of Huru. Gio said hands off of Huru. Woo! What a mess. What a mess. Yikes. Okay. Let's get the comment on Rockfin, Eric. Jeez Louise. Woo! Thank you for the tip, Roger. In the end, Israel will lose not because of moral argument, but because of the American people's self-interest. More Americans who are not emotionally invested in this conflict than Americans who are. In the end, it is the former who surpassed the latter in numbers, and I've already been hearing rumblings of resentment asking, why do you refuse to help us, but we'll move heaven and earth to help another government who has things we'd like also. I watched Cat Williams' special last night on Netflix. Even Cat Williams was making fun of how the U.S. government is giving money to other countries, but not helping people here. Okay. So there is that. He's made fun of Biden and Trump too in that special. Check it out if you have time. Okay. Let's get to these comments, and then I am looking at the time and realizing that I am going over time. Let's go to the comments here. Jacqueline says, Israel are bombing little babies and children. It's a pretty safe bet that they're not fighters. Gamer says, the Jews for Palestinians are based. Thank you, Andre. Have you seen Bad Faith episode with Bree and John Nichols? I did see that. Thank you, TWID. That's what I do. We know these people are the people of Revelations 2:9. Religion is a belief. Thank you, Christopher. Just saw the first story as a white guy. I'm disgusted. I'm sorry, Christopher, but yeah, it is what it is. We got to have these discussions. I'm sitting back waiting to see how many other people are going to cover that story, because I don't think a lot of people will. Thank you. Where is the love? Wu, born in West Virginia and raised in Mississippi. It's no surprise. But it doesn't matter. There are people like that have statements like Briahna Wu that didn't grow up in those states. Thank you, Dina. Keep up the hard work, Sabby. Thanks. You are welcome. Thank you, New York. Go ahead and say it. Show their whole ass. New York varsity knows. That's right. Thank you, coffee lover. Zionist liberals always come off as reasonable people until the conversation is about Israel and Palestine. Then they turn into savages, so two-faced. Thank you, cynical. Asking us to debate others' humanity is insane. I still can't get over that. Yeah. They don't see them as people. Thank you, hysteric Raider. As an Asian, we are pretty pro-white. You guys hear all this? Not me. I'm not saying this. Listen, see whitening cream and how much money that industry makes. Wu also might have yellow fever. There's that. So there you go. Thank you for the Rumble Rant goo. Constantine is a known establishment shill. And for this one, not the first time he had made a backhanded racist comment that Europeans are superior, even saying Russians are backwards because they are not European, being Ukrainian himself. Whole lot of racist folks around, whole lot. Okay, we are going to try to finish up Ohio. I got 2 more ballot measures on Ohio that we'll finish up, and then we'll be moving on to the next state. I think Tuesday. So finishing up Ohio, the abortion issue. So these are Ohio ballot measures for 2023, the results. Ohio issue 1, right to make reproductive decisions, including abortion initiative. A yes vote supported amending the Constitution, provide a state constitutional right to make and carry out one's own reproductive decisions, including but not limited to decisions about abortion, contraception, fertility treatment, miscarriage care, and continuing pregnancy, and allow the state to restrict abortion after fetal viability, except when necessary to protect the pregnant patient's life or health. This measure passed. It was ratified by 56.62%. So that was pretty huge there for Ohio. And this is interesting too. As of 2023, abortion was legal in Ohio for up to 21 weeks and 6 days of pregnancy. When it came to pass issue 1, passing or failing, Grace Panetta, a reporter from the 19th News, said, if issue 1 passes, abortion and other forms of reproductive health care will be protected in the state constitution. If it fails, the courts will most likely decide the fate of abortion access in Ohio. So I think a lot of us remember that measure passing in Ohio. And who supported it, we can see it was Democrat politicians that supported that measure. And there was one nonpartisan, and that was the Cleveland Mayor Justin Bibb. Some former officials, again, Democrats. What's interesting is New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg, Hillary Clinton, like none of these individuals, right? They don't reside there in Ohio except for Nina Turner. But it's interesting that they also were supporting the measure. Political parties that supported: Green Party of Ohio, Working Families Party, Democratic Party, the teachers, right? A union supported it. Some organizations include the ACLU, Abortion Fund of Ohio, et cetera, is a long list there. Democratic Socialists of America, Planned Parenthood. You guys know how this works. And then one of the arguments from Lauren, the chair of Ohioans for Reproductive Freedom, said the people of Ohio overwhelmingly support abortion access and keeping the government out of our personal lives. This citizen-led amendment will do just that through our deep community partnership and long history of protecting reproductive freedom and providing access to health care. This campaign puts the power back in the hands of the people of Ohio. So, yeah, we all remember. I think all of you remember when that passed, right? At least I remember when it passed. So that was, and of course, you guys know, with the opponents, the Republican politicians were the ones that opposed it, right? Interesting, because it said there that keeping the government out of your life, and the Republican Party usually the ones that say keep the government out. But when it comes to the abortion issue, they want the government to be involved. Interesting. And then I think we're going to go to, there should be one more BI measure here for Ohio. With the this measure, you can see how much money was spent to support it and how much money was spent to oppose it, right? So again, usually the amount of money spent that has the highest dollar amount is usually the way the measure goes, right? Which way it passes. Usually that's how it works. And then there's one more about the marijuana one we'll get to as well. Note here from Roger that said a simple majority vote was required to approve the citizen-initiated constitutional amendment. In August, voters rejected a different issue one put on the ballot by the Ohio legislature, which would have required a 60% vote among other changes. This was ratified by 56%. Yeah, and that's where that 60% can become a little scary. And then the other measure here is Ohio Issue 2, which is marijuana legalization, which I'm sure a lot of you that live in Ohio became excited about. A yes vote supported this ballot initiative to legalize marijuana in Ohio, including allowing the sale and purchase of marijuana, which a new division of cannabis control would regulate. 2, allowing adults who are at least 21 years old to use and possess marijuana, including up to 2.5 ounces of marijuana. And 3, enacting a 10% tax on marijuana sales. So yeah, this measure was approved by 56.97%. Yeah, I know. It's making its way around. It's making its way around through the states, which I think is pretty based. Even if you don't smoke, I mean, it's a plan. Sorry, it's a plan. Yeah, and it talks about social equity and jobs program. Yeah, this is another one too. The initiative established the Cannabis Social Equity and Jobs Program. The program was designed to remedy the harms resulting from the disproportionate enforcement of marijuana-related laws and provide financial assistance and license application support and reduce barriers to ownership and opportunity to those most directly and adversely impacted by the enforcement of marijuana-related laws who are interested in starting or working in marijuana business. Yeah. So, I mean, like these, again, creating jobs. And every state is different. So just make sure you check that. Every state is different. The laws here in Massachusetts may be different from in Ohio. But this is a measure, I think, that has a lot of times bipartisan support. And you can see that here. Who supported it? We have Democrats, a Republican, and Cleveland Mayor Justin Bibb, who's nonpartisan. Nina Turner, Tim Ryan supported that. But typically, if you talk to people, whether they're Republican or Democrat, most people I've talked to support it. Green Party of Ohio, corporations, Curaleaf, organizations, the ACLU of Ohio, Marijuana Policy Project. And one of the arguments from Tom Herron, we are proposing to regulate marijuana for adult use, just like we do for alcohol. Our proposal fixes a broken system while ensuring local control, keeping marijuana out of the hands of children and benefiting everyone. So yeah. And of course, Republicans opposed it. You guys know how this goes. And I just want to go to the part here about the money that was spent. So again, once see the dollar amount, over $342,000 spent to oppose it. And we have over 5.7 million to support it. So once again, the higher dollar amount usually wins when it comes to these particular ballot measures. A note here from Roger Meadows. Roger, thank you so much for this. Legislative alteration. The Ohio General Assembly may repeal or amend an initiated state statute without having to ask the voters first by a simple majority vote. Let's see if they can let this stand as is. In the meantime, someone should get a citizen-initiated constitutional amendment for an Ohio public bank now that cannabis is legalized. Cannabis businesses are going to need somewhere to deposit those profits. As it stands, currently, they can't deposit profits in banks because they must abide by federal banking regulations since they are FDIC insured. A public bank can be the replacement insurer for the FDIC when it comes to insuring credit unions and local community banks. Then I wonder how we're doing it here in Massachusetts, because we don't have a public bank and we have like several cannabis shops. So I wonder how they're doing it here. Like, where are they depositing it? I don't know. Interesting. In other words, it'll be the state that legalized cannabis insuring local community banks and credit unions rather than the federal government through the FDIC. It's really interesting. Yeah, now I'm curious. I wonder, like, how are they doing that? Oh, well. I guess we'll find out. Guys, that is it for me. Thank you so much for hanging out with me on a Sunday, fam. And it's time for me to go. Thank you for the super chat, Lorez. I'm Asian, concur 100% with Hysterica Raider. Hey, again, those weren't my words. All right, guys, I am out of here. Peace out. Please have a great Sunday evening and a great Monday. I'll be back live Tuesday night. You know what we got to say? Have a good night. Keep up the fight.